be sending out a copy of that to everybody who registered. So with that, Sue Ann, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Corey. I am so excited to be here again with SSDA and so thrilled that we can talk about a super important subject, taking care of those people who care for our students, those teachers and administrators that work with our kiddos every day, and how can we help them to recover and work through this situation with COVID. So just a little quick background about myself. I am also a retired educator. I spent a lot of years as a principal, curriculum director of federal programs, and spent over half of my career in wonderful, amazing rural school districts in Northern Colorado. So I am so thrilled to be here today to talk to you guys about crisis. How do things interact, with self-efficacy and growth and change, and how do we rebound, and then what strategies can we put into place for teachers, focused on teachers. But I would definitely say that a lot of things that you're going to hear today can be used on a smaller scale and even with our students. So don't be afraid. Like Corey said, please stick a question in the chat. I'm going to encourage you to come off of mute and to do some interacting and ask questions. So feel free to give me a holler if you'd like today. So let's start off and kind of ground ourselves today with that definition of crisis. What does that mean? What does it really mean? Well, we all know this first definition. It means it's a time of intense difficulty, trouble. We've all been living almost a full year in this kind of time. The really important thing, though, is there's a secondary definition that most people don't know about. That means this crisis time is also a time where we have to make difficult and important decisions. As you all know, as leaders, it has been so many decisions piled one on top of another, and oftentimes decisions that need to be made very quickly. Well, during crisis times, we know that is often depleted, and we're going to talk about why that happens. I really want to encourage you too to think of, I don't personally like the term new normal, because really it's more of a temporary normal. It might be long-term, it might be a year or two, but really what we're experiencing now is not normal. It's not something that we're used to operating in. So we're going to return to a normal life. It might be some changes and some tweaks. We might have to modify again some of those things temporarily, but we're going to get back to being able to have a normal time. And I brought out a wonderful quote from a fabulous book. If you've not read the book Whole, What Teachers Need to Help Students Succeed, it is an amazing book. Actually, our CEO of Meteor Education was one of the co-writers. And, this was written and released, believe it or not, right at the very beginning of COVID. And I thought this is such an apropos quote, because right now, teaching is tough. Teaching is not something, we've got brand new teachers coming into this, and it is truly like this tsunami right now. We know that our teachers and our staff are just truly struggling. Even those who say, yes, I'm doing okay, I want to encourage you, continue to check in on them, because they could be struggling. We just don't even know it. This is just such a beautiful word splash on, that was brought by Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And I also called CASEL. So you'll hear me talk about CASEL quite a bit during this. And they did a survey of 5,000 participants, and all educators, and they wanted to know, tell me how you're feeling. What are you feeling right now? And if you notice, anxiety was the number one thing that people said. And, anxiety is definitely something that we know. Now, anxiety, though, in different people manifests in different ways. So why in the world are we anxious? Well, we've got uncertainty. Can I teach in this new way? We've got a lot of people who may still not be completely comfortable with technology. They might have gotten their smartphones, they might be okay there, but there's all these new things that we're asking them to do. And, how do I use that technology? How do I stay kind of one step in their heads in front of the kids? Disruption in normal routine, of course. I know personally, my daughter, who's a freshman in high school, has gone fully remote, hybrid, fully remote again, back hybrid again a week ago. So, we're having to readjust all the time. Sometimes people have income concerns, health concerns, family that may be sick, or maybe they've had pre-existing conditions that now they've gotten COVID, and that's, amplifying those conditions. The other things that are super important, and I set those aside, are extremely, extremely important because we are living in this online world right now. I want us to really think, we rely a lot on body language as input. And when you put a classroom full of 25 students on a little screen, kids are this big, you're only seeing from the chest up. You're not able to see really how students are reacting all the time. You're not able to see a student when they slump in. And we may be even dealing with students who don't ever even put their camera on. So if you can't see them, that's really hard. Well, then the other part is when we get into class, if we're masking up, you can't see smiles, facial expressions. Teachers rely so much on that proximity and that touch point of getting that eye contact and being able to nod and say it's going to be okay, or way to go, or good job. So that's really, really tough when you can't see that input. You can read someone's eyes, but if you've got students or teachers who are really struggling for that hug and that human connection, they might be struggling during this time. Well, then, when you add in all of these together, you've got basically a recipe, that's going to cause some stress. You've got vulnerabilities, pre-existing risk factors. Maybe you've got familial depression or anxiety. Maybe you've just got those extroverts. I know myself, I know I've got a friend on here who is an extrovert, and I know she loves being out and being face to face with people. And boy, when she gets out in front of people, she lights up. Well, you've probably seen that joke on the internet, please call on the extroverts, they're struggling. Well, it's a very true thing. Then you've got stressors, of course, like we just talked about, those things that are causing anxiety, those external factors, internal triggers. Then you've got responses. Well, some of us don't, as adults, have good coping strategies. Maybe we've never really been in a situation where we've had to struggle. So maybe our coping strategies are not well built. You've also got students that deal with that too. We all know that. So remember that some of those responses could be intolerance of uncertainty, anxiety, of course. Even people who are not diagnosed with anxiety, sometimes you might be a little anxious. We've all been in those situations, haven't we, where we've been anxious. Then you've got some people who maybe hyper focus on problems. Then on the other end of that hyper focus, you've also got people who maybe might even be more introverted, and they want to escape and they want to avoid problems. They want to step back and really go, oh, you know what, that's out there, I don't have to deal with it. Then, of course, you've got those folks who love that reassurance. Those teachers can't have us as administrators going through the building, popping into classroom, giving little notes of encouragement. And even though, evaluation is sometimes nerve-wracking for people, a lot of folks do love it. They love having their administrator come in and give them that feedback. Then, of course, emotional and behavioral avoidance. You've even got folks who want to check out of the cognitive tasks that often we have to really be focused and engaged in, because they just can't handle that right now. Another big problem, again, with that online environment is misunderstanding someone's emotions. How do we communicate right now? We're doing a lot of communicating by phone, by text, by email, and by Zoom. But think of how oftentimes we can, read someone, we can see that body language. In a text or in an email, we cannot often judge someone else's emotions. So sometimes there are misunderstandings that happen. And we all know that theory of change. Well, I want to kind of reform this for you and reframe this for you. I want you to think of this also in the context of the waves that are coming and going with surges in COVID. So if you think about it, at the very beginning, way back in February, March last year, sometime around there, we were all probably in shock that this was happening. And then a lot of us, toward the West, it's just something that's happening on the East Coast, something that's happening overseas. It's probably not going to happen here. Well, then quarantine happened and frustration sets in, low moods and energy lacking sets in. And then, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We've got vaccines coming. We've got people that are getting better. We see success rates on, people who are surviving. Well, I want you to think, now that you're kind of on that upswing, what happens when we have another wave come through? We all kind of looked at 21 and we all said, oh yes, 2021, we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to be out of this. Wonderful. I bet right now, if we polled everybody here, put it in a chat here. If you have been experiencing or have experienced in the last couple of months, having to go back into a quarantine situation or back into a lockdown, tell me in that chat, just put a yes or a number 1 in there if you've had to go back into a chat or into a quarantine or a lockdown situation. Yes, I see some lockdowns coming through. Yes. Now, what happens when you go back into that situation? Guess what? We're right back into that curve again. And I really want you to take a look, and you're going to get a copy of this, so you can go back and refer to this anytime. But I want you to pay attention to the color coding on the right-hand side. That's going to give you some really big hints on how we need to help people cope. So you're going to help people get motivated and get excited. You're going to maximize and create more communication. You're going to share knowledge as you have it. You want to make sure that, if I can say anything more than any other strategy, it's communicate, communicate, communicate. Because people right now, when they get pulled into that lockdown or that quarantine or that isolation, they need more and more communication. So that's definitely number 1. And the reason we're going through all of these is back to good old Maslow's theory. I want to again, take a look at this in a different light. I want us to look at it from the lens of employee engagement. So when you are in that survival mode and you don't have those basic needs met, you're going to feel disengaged. That's really tough, because we need to feel, we know when you walk into a school, the most exciting thing, the most energetic thing is when you see people high-fiving and hugging, and you're hearing the kids excited, and you're hearing teachers motivating one another. Well, when you're isolated in your own room and your own space at home, and you've gotten isolated, or maybe you can't see and you really rely on that facial recognition and that smile to get you through the day. Even if you are back in school, because I know many of you have not even gone into a remote situation. That is so exciting, but it's still tough, because sometimes people could be dealing with maybe someone sick at home, maybe someone sick or isolated or quarantined across the country. We just got through the holidays, and many people did not engage with family in person. They didn't hug. They didn't stick together. They didn't get to have Thanksgiving, things like that. So really, when we're up and down in that Maslow's hierarchy, we know we're going to go through times again, much, much like this change curve. So again, just really checking in. So one of the biggest things that gets impacted, people who know me know I talk about self-efficacy all the time, because it is the true core of how we get excited about things. Now, the number 1 key to student success is a combined self-efficacy of teachers. So when your staff really has this shared belief that we can do it as teachers and we know the students can do it. That's the number one indicator of student success. Well, self-efficacy really gets impacted when you go through crisis because it's a triangle. It's a really big integrated system based in the social learning theory that Bandura put out many, many years ago, around in the mid 70s, that says if you believe that you can do something, you are going to have the capacity to make those decisions. Well, it depends on the environment around you, the individual themselves, and the behaviors that they put out. Well, when one of those pieces is impacted, it is really going to impact their ability to learn, to succeed, to change, to really go toward and move toward a goal and do that together. So really, when we're in a crisis, what is happening is exactly what Rana said. The isolation is so real with staff because even if you're in a building full time, we know that part of the contact tracing, part of the ability to keep groups and cohorts together is making sure that people stay with that individual group. Well, when teachers can't gather in the teacher's lounge, see each other in the hallway as much, you're going to have a lot of people who start to feel like they're isolated. And I absolutely, I am so sorry. Yes, absolutely. It does make you feel so disconnected. You guys are right on. You know and understand. You feel the pain of your staff. Any really good leader knows that that connection is important. Now, again, you heard me talk about Castle. They are one of the biggest research groups about social and emotional learning. So I want just to have this definition out in front of us so we all have that shared definition. And it's the process by which even adults, not just children, sometimes we think it's just kids we're talking about. It's really not, especially right now. And I will tell you, my prediction is that we're going to be doing this for quite a while. So really making sure that our adults are taken care of is super, super important. But it's the process by which adults in our conversation today acquire and apply knowledge, skills, all of that to be able to understand and manage emotions, manage and be able to make decisions. Again, it is super important and it is the basis of self-efficacy. So when we take care of our teachers, they're going to take better care of our students. I want to just call your attention to this really amazing, Katrina, I'm going to get to your question in 1 sec. I love that question. Don't let me forget it because I want to come back to that. There has been some amazing research that came out through a huge group of psychologists throughout the entire world. They sent out, it's the Barrett Values Center, and they sent out surveys to folks across all kinds of different environments, all kinds of professions. And they wanted to take a look at this scale, this model. Is there fulfillment? Are there higher partnerships that, are people making good, positive interpersonal relationships? And they wanted people to rate pre-COVID and during COVID, how are things going in your workplace? And what they did is they talked about education specifically, called it out. I loved this. This was wonderful that they actually did this for us. And they talked about pre-COVID, what they were finding is that employees felt that they really, they were acting responsibly, but they maybe weren't collaborating as much. Look at what we're seeing happening to our profession. New ideas, new ways of working, new levels and efforts to care for one another. That is exciting news for us. In all of this sadness that we're seeing and all of the struggling that we're seeing, we're really seeing some beautiful things happen out of this. I love that the ongoing focus, they're seeing a lot of educators say that the ongoing focus is on learning and developing and supportive workplaces. That's absolutely wonderful. And I do want to take just a second, Katrina, let me answer. Katrina, for those of you who can't see the chat, says, what happens when we have supervisors with no empathy? What really has to happen, Katrina, is people have to rally. People are going to have to really step up. And we all know that there are different groups of leaders. There are positional leaders that have that position of a supervisor, but there are leaders within those buildings. So people will really need to be empowered and encouraged to help one another. So we're going to talk about some ways that you can do that in just a minute. Again, you're going to see this, so I'm not going to read all of this to you, but you'll see that really nice shift into more collaboration post-COVID and for recovery is what the Barrett Center came up with in their research. It's just wonderful to see that agile, ability to really turn on a dime. So that is so exciting. It's going to be a neat change to see. I will say, I'm very, very positive and very excited about what we can see happen in the future. I really believe that this new focus on taking care of people as people is going to be one of the biggest linchpins and tipping points that we're going to need to make sure we implement in order to see massive amounts of recovery and success post-COVID. So let's take a look now. What in the world can we do as leaders when we're stuck out in Neverland, when we're hours from home, like someone said, and we don't have that connection? What can we do? So I want you to think about this model. This is called the SCARF model. And basically what this says is there are different ways that we can reach out, we can touch that person mentally, we can make sure that we're there for them, and we can encourage them to make their coping mechanisms much healthier. So again, if one of these pieces is not in place, what happens is you will find that employee confidence and people confidence in their own abilities, and confidence in their workplace really, really starts to struggle. So again, if we're looking at these, think about someone in your staff that you know is really struggling right now. Is it certainty? Is it things that they've talked about, maybe that there's not a clear order at work, maybe they're not sure what the next step is, maybe they're again not confident in their own ability to do that work? Are they struggling there? Are they struggling sometimes in feeling that things are not fair, things are not sufficient for them? Not fair as in, just the baseline fare of, like, much like a third grader would say, well, they got 2 pieces of pizza and I got 1. Not that kind of fair, but fair as in, am I getting ample time for my administrator? Are people being taught or treated the same way? Are decisions that are being made really taking me into consideration? And then the third one is that relatedness. Do I feel like I'm a part of the team? Well, when you have that tri-legged stool, I want you to think about what happens if I take one of those pieces out. Oh my gosh, I'm going to teeter quite a bit. Well, then maybe 2 things get knocked out from underneath me. Then I'm having to really, really focus. Well, when your focus is on one of these things being off kilter, you're going to struggle even more. So again, some of those things that we can do are so easy, very baseline. I'm going to give you a large range today to look at. I'm going to give you some things that are kind of those that you're going to go, oh, well, duh, of course, Sue Ann, I do that all the time. Then there are some things that you might think, okay, that's a little different. Maybe I need to try those things. So some very simple things right away are very transparent leadership. Being very transparent about the decisions that are being made. If I were working with a board member or a school board, what I would say to them is making sure that when they pass down a decision, that's made for a district in this time, really making sure that explanation is given behind it, or support or evidence that helps people kind of understand and go, oh, I see why. Gives them that context. Role modeling. Now, leaders, from one retired principal to a group of leaders, I want to say we are a very poor role model sometimes in taking care of ourselves. How many people can raise their hand and honestly say, yes, I definitely don't take care of myself all the time. Yep, absolutely. I know we don't. So I want you to really work on modeling yourself, okay? So when you're looking at these next few slides, I really want you to be thinking, what can I do for myself? Clear objectives, making sure that we have very, very clear outlines of here's what's expected. Here's what's expected within our school day, within that hour of class, within those 7 hours of class, all of that. Creating that peer support network. Maybe even creating a virtual tea time, a virtual coffee hour. You know, my team, ourselves, during the really big quarantine lockdown, what I did is twice a week, I just had a water cooler time where you're welcome. It's not required. You can pop on and we're just going to chit chat. And there was no business allowed during that time. Everything that we did during that time was chatting. How's your family? Hey, what's your favorite food? Let's get to know one another. And I just finished a round of goal setting for the year, and we talked about some things. And one of the favorite things that came out of all of COVID, believe it or not, were those times. And our team is saying, please, can we have that still? We still want that. We love that because it's no risk. It's just a time to hang out and chat. So it's 30 minutes. We put it on the calendar and whoever wants to show up can show up. So something like that would even be wonderful. If you have, since we're so small, what I would really encourage you is find a good old pen pal district and make those connections teacher to teacher across districts, leader to leader. How many of you can think to yourselves, and you don't have to answer, but think to yourselves, how many of you often feel lonely? It's so hard because you know what happens in a rural school district, right? You've got a title of curriculum director, but guess what? You hit a button and there's 10 extra titles that flip down, right? Your curriculum director, your federal programs manager, your Title I, your special ed, your gifted, your all these things all rolled into one. That's really tough to do it all on your own. And things right now, again, are constantly changing. And then making sure, again, that technology systems are set and able for people to be able to really, truly access one another. So this, again, you are going to have a copy of these slides. So I don't want you to feel like you have to write all of this down real quick, but I just want to show you what is going on right now. You know, people are asking, how do I live right now? How do I manage? So you've got that struggle that happened many, many months ago. People might be looping back into that. Then we have that awareness. Now it's time to really commit to those actions. So some of those things you can do. Mindfulness, I would tell you, I believe is the #1 strategy. We talk about it. We even do mindfulness strategies with students, right? How many of you put just a 1 or a yes in the chat if you have implemented some mindfulness strategies and that positive thinking attitude in your buildings? How many of you? Or raise your hand, because some of you are on video, so I can see some hands. Absolutely. Excellent, right? We really need those to happen even for our teachers. So what in the world is that? Why? Because it changes response. When you have mindfulness in play, instead of just going to reaction, a reaction actually changes into a response. Now you might be wondering, what in the world is different between a reaction and a response? A reaction is something that happens instantaneously without pre-thought. That's that whole frontal lobe, right? Those middle school boys that we have, or middle school girls that we have, that often react without pre-thinking, right? Absolutely. been there, done that. We've all been there. What happens when you implement a mindfulness strategy that is purposeful? You give people a chance to think and truly respond, and be able to respond positively, be able to voice what I want you to really, if I could encourage you nothing more today about mindfulness, here's what I would tell you. People need to feel safe to tell you. If Corey called me today and said, Sue-Ann, how are you doing? If I'm not doing well, I need to be able to have the safety to say to Corey, you know what, Corey, I'm actually having kind of a bad day today. Or, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm having a great day today. Not just, I want to, for the next week, here's your challenge. I want you to not only ask the question of how people are, but I want you, when somebody says, oh, well, how are you? Laura, how are you today? I want you to have the mindfulness. I want you to have the guts and the grit to look at someone if you're not having a great day and say, you know what, man, thanks for asking. I'm actually not doing super great today. Because put in the chat, what is the number one answer that people will give you when you ask them, how are you today? Tell me, what is it? Great, fine, I'm fine, good. You guys are right on. I want us to banish those words. I want us to really focus on truly, how are you today? Because you know what? It's okay not to be okay. And I want us to really talk about that with people. Share this with them. If you want, I will tell you this, if you want even to gather and talk to teachers, you call a buddy and you talk about this. Because if you implement and you really look at mindfulness, it does not just three, but three major things. It reduces stress. It even reduces our healthcare cost because it reduces stress. Because chronic stress, they say, right, not just right now, but typical years, that being a teacher these days is much like working in a MASH hospital. Imagine what that MASH hospital looks like right now. Another thing that mindfulness does, it improves our sleep. It reduces people's inability to get up and really go to work. It also lowers your blood pressure. Who knew, right? So we want to be mindful. When you're being mindful, you've got to control what you can control. You've got to encourage people. It's okay. You know what? We can't control that. The biggest piece about coping, though, is understanding and helping your staff to understand that the current reality is what it is. It is what it is. Allow them to grieve a little bit of loss. I've had so many conversations with teachers that say, oh my gosh, I miss my kids. I just miss my kids. You know what? I understand. I get that. We can't change everything today. You know, it's okay to feel sad, stressed, confused. Again, encouraging them to talk to people. See if you can challenge your own staff to do the same challenge that I gave to you today. Really answer, how are you today? Being fully present. How many of you, anybody familiar with the fish philosophy? You ever used the fish philosophy? Fabulous book. If you ever want to read it, it's a terrific book. One of the things that they talk about is being fully present. You know what? I have spent more time, and proudly spent more time than I ever have in my entire career, being present with my staff, giving them time to check in, to talk, to cry. You know, I really want to encourage folks to create structure, routine. If you happen to be online, creating that regular routine, getting dressed. I know I was guilty. I will be the first to admit, I was very guilty the first, probably month and a half. I would get up and go to work online because I didn't have to be on video, and I'd go to work online in a sweatshirt and a pair of sweats. You know, there's a difference when you wake up, do your hair, get dressed, feel like you're at work, setting a time for lunch. I actually just got done talking to someone the other day who said, "Oh yeah, I'm working so hard and I'm plowing through everything. So I'm getting so much done." I said, "When's the last time you got up away from your computer and went and ate lunch?" Please don't eat lunch at your computer. Get up, get away. Encourage your teachers. We know now it's a little chilly today. I'm in Salt Lake City today. It's a little chilly, but don't sit just at your desk in your classroom. Get up, walk around, take a little quick brisk walk outside. Don't force yourself to sit in front of that computer. That's not even healthy. Again, connection, encouraging connection, engaging in activities that remind us that we are the same person, that is still around even during this crisis. I love the idea of even finding a new hobby. Try a new recipe. How many of you, those of you who are on video, I'm loving the video, raise your hand if you tried something new during the pandemic so far. Yes, I'm glad to see some hands up. Yay. That is so much fun. That is so wonderful because you're trying something new. Encourage your group. Oh, I love Erin. Thank you for raising your hand on the video. I love it. You know, try something new. And guess what? It's okay to fail at that new thing. That's okay because you tried something new. I really, hope opportunity. Every single day, try a little gratitude journal. I just have a blank notebook. It just has lines. You know how we educators are. We love the office store. So go pick out a really cool looking notebook and write 5 things every day that you're grateful for. Watch what happens after 30 days. I will guarantee you the research says you will find yourself more positive. Doesn't have to be a paragraph, doesn't have to be, it can be just five phrases. Guess what I stopped doing during the beginning of the pandemic? I've done a gratitude journal for over 5 years. I stopped during the pandemic. It's not healthy. 5 little things. The reason we stop at 5, I want you to think about this whenever you're doing these, because you're going to have a lot of strategies by the time we're done with this. Don't pick more than 5. The reason you don't pick more than 5, this is a handful. It's a visual handful. It's a mental handful. That's all I can handle. I can only handle what's in my hand right now. That's it. That's why you don't do more than 5 in a gratitude journal, because you don't want to feel like you're sitting there. It becomes a chore after 5. Again, hope, opportunity, being able to patronize those local restaurants, even if it's takeout, going through things, going through your closet, giving donations, practicing kindness, making sure, if you've never used, how many of you just click on I love the hand raising on your visuals here. How many of you have the app called GroupMe? Anybody use GroupMe? GroupMe is a wonderful, wonderful way. You can put all of your staff in there and it's a single text message instead of having to put in everybody's name into a group. And it's wonderful because every once in a while, you can toss a funny meme in, say good morning to people, being able to, just again, chat and connect. Begin building those patience, sending a card to someone, even to your own staff. Don't forget those birthday cards. Pre-write. I used to pre-write every school year. I would start off and I would pre-write my birthday cards and have them in a box that I could give those out to staff. Well, you can't do that now. So if maybe I'm in my building, maybe I'm not in my building, sending those in the mail, having someone open a letter, reaching out to an old friend that you haven't talked to. Again, thinking and remember that things have to have intention. Really understanding folks around you, behaving very calmly. And I know this seems like a really silly strategy to put up there, but I want you to think about this. Binge watching our favorite show or a new show is not calm behavior. when you spend, an entire weekend and that's all you're doing is sitting on the couch, that's not healthy. Again, you want to minimize that. Meditate, read, breathe, just stop. Again, push yourself away from that computer and take a minute to breathe. Distract your staff. When you're doing a staff meeting, do some fun emotional activities. I'll even share, Corey, you'll have to remind me, but I'll share with you a really fun activity that actually our leadership at Meteor Education just got done doing. And Gina can attest to this. It was a really neat little look back, but also look forward at some future hope. It's a really great way to engage your team. Again, yawning, stretching, every single hour, your brain needs a break. So if you look at brain research, your brain has to get out of a routine. It loves novelty. So being able to step away, and I want you to think of that as acronym, STOP. So it's stand up, breathe, tune into your body, kind of, like lower your head, take that deep breath in, look around, observe, taking a look out the window, open that window. If it's a nice day, get outside, work outside if you can, take your students outside, encourage your teachers to take kids outside. And then thinking of possibilities. So it's a little bitty thing, but it's a huge mindfulness practice. Again, writing down aspirations. A lot of times, putting that up on the whiteboard, thinking of something positive. If you've never used the Fit On app, anybody here use the Fit On app? It is a really great way to have little reminders. It'll actually remind you and say, hey, woohoo, it's time to get up. Another really amazing software that I love is called Rhythm, and that is spelled correctly, believe it or not. And the Rhythm software is a virtual check-in. You can use it in class, you can use it with staff, you can use it with students, but basically what it is it's a little, takes about maybe a minute. It's all icon driven. You log in and you say, how are you feeling? How's your body feel today? How's your energy level? How's your focus level? What that software does, I would highly encourage you, if you do nothing else with that particular software, using it as a check-in with your staff is amazing, because you can take it as a report and you can look at it and go, ooh, man, my energy level is low in the building today, across the district today. Maybe our group, our BOCES group, our energy is low. What can we do? As a leader, I need to be aware of that. Maybe I even assign, oftentimes, going back to that original question on what do you do if you have a leader that's not really engaged? Having people assigned to that keep an ear out for others. Having them, you know what, you're on my warning patrol. If you start to see something, you're going to let me know. So Rhythm software, anything that kind of gets you, again, connected. And then the final little thing here that I just want you to think of is, if you've never read The Happiness Trap, it is a tremendous book by Russ Harris. And he came out at the beginning of COVID and he said, okay, what can we do? We can face COVID. This is not something we can hide from. So we are going to face it. And he came up with this amazing acronym, focus, acknowledging those thoughts and feelings, engage yourself physically. Many of us have kind of put that aside. Engage and be focused on what you're doing, and then have a committed action. Open up, identify your values, make sure you're focused on those, and the resources that we have. Oftentimes our insurances even have resources that are free to folks that they can call and talk to someone. And then of course, disinfect and distance. I can't leave that one off, right? We've got to keep that distance. But I just want to say thank you. Does anyone have any questions? You know, I'm going to make sure that I share that with Corey. You'll have the PowerPoint. You will have all of these strategies here and understanding. Feel free to use that with staff if you'd like, or share with your leadership, or if you need me to step in and share that with your leadership or additional leaders, feel free to holler. You've got my connection here, and Corey can set up maybe another webinar if you'd like. But for now, does anyone have any questions or comments or anything I can help you with, or any other things I can answer? You guys are amazing. I'm going to toss it back to Corey. Oh, let's see. Oh, I loved this. I just got a message that any advice for dealing with negativity among staff. You know, negativity, of course, like they say, negativity breeds negativity, right? It's something that you want to make sure that you head on, because really we need to not become confrontational. We want to get to the root cause. So if we think back to Maslow's hierarchy and think back to that crisis and grief curve, sometimes that negativity, let's say, for example, Jessica, kind of to your question, let's say that you've got a teacher who is acting very angry. Actually, I'll give you a great example. I worked with a teacher, was doing some brainstorming with her, and she just felt upset and angry. Well, the longer I let her talk it out. Well, come to find out, about 30 or 40 minutes into the conversation, it really wasn't about being angry. It was that someone in her family was very sick and she was very scared. So remember that negativity and anger often come from a root of being nervous, being scared, being anxious. So the first piece of advice I would say when you're dealing with negativity is take the time to listen. You may have to build that trust. It may have to come over several different times that you're having a conversation, but building the trust and showing them that I'm here to listen and not judge is going to be something that you really need to do first. Jessica, I would say reach out to me. You've got my email right here, or you've got my phone number. You feel free to text me or call me. Because I can walk you through some specific strategies based on your situation. But it's negativity and all of that anxiousness and anger oftentimes comes with a root cause of something else that really has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the situation in general and the feeling that they can't control it. So you know how you feel when sometimes you're out of control, things are out of your control. That's really a lot of times that come from that. Any other questions? Let me toss up the chat. Absolutely, Jessica, anytime. Anybody else? All right, well, Corey, I'm going to hand it back over to you because we're about at our time. So I don't want to keep anyone.
No, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Sue-Ann, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I will be, as I mentioned in the chat, I'll be sending out a copy of Sue-Ann's PowerPoint probably tomorrow, along with a link to this video, which we'll be posting on our YouTube channel. Other than that, if you have any other questions after this, feel free to get in touch with me, and I can put you in touch with Sue-Ann, or Sue-Ann has her information on her PowerPoint as well. And Sue-Ann, thank you again so much for a second wonderful webinar. This has been absolutely great. We truly appreciate your support.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you. Thanks for all your interaction today, you guys.
Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.